All right, let's jump right into one of the heaviest, most influential, and yet pretty controversial books in all of political philosophy, Thomas Hobbes's Leviathan. It all boils down to one really brutal question. What is the ultimate price we are willing to pay for peace?
This quote, wow, it's maybe the most famous line from the book, and it's Hobbes's absolutely chilling conclusion about what life is like without any rules. Just imagine a world with no government, no laws, what he famously called the state of nature, a world where there's nothing to stop our worst impulses.
You gotta wonder, right? How on earth does someone arrive at such a bleak, pessimistic view of humanity? And maybe even more importantly, if that's the problem, what in the world was his solution? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack.
To really get Hobbes's whole political theory, we have to start where he did. We've got to look under the hood, at his view of human psychology. For him, everything, and I mean everything, starts with the basic mechanics of what makes us tick.
And his view is, well, it's pretty cold, kind of mechanical, really. He didn't see people as having some kind of divine spark or anything like that. Nope. To Hobbes, we're basically just complex machines. The heart, that's a spring. The nerves, just a bunch of strings. And our joints, they're the wheels. Everything we do, every single thought we have, is just motion.
Okay, so if we're all just machines in motion, what's driving us? According to Hobbes, it's super simple. Just two basic forces, appetite and aversion. Think of it like a magnet. We're constantly being pulled towards things we desire, food, comfort, power, and pushed away from things we fear, like pain and the big one, death. That's it. That is our entire operating system.
And out of that very simple programming, two huge dominant passions emerge. First, this constant, nagging, perpetual fear of a violent death. And second, this restless, never-ending desire for more and more power. But here's the key. It's not really about being greedy. It's that power is the only reliable tool we have to secure our future and keep that fear of death away.
So let's run the thought experiment. What happens when you take a bunch of these power-seeking, death-fearing machines and you just throw them all together with absolutely no rules to govern them? Yeah, you get chaos. This is Hobbes's most famous idea, the state of nature. And just to be clear, he isn't saying this was a real time in history. It's a condition. It's what happens anytime there's no central authority, no common power with enough muscle to enforce rules and keep everyone, as he says, in awe. In this state, conflict isn't just possible, it is absolutely inevitable. Hobbes says it boils down to three main drivers. First, we fight out of competition, because we want what someone else has. Second, we fight out of diffidence, which is really just a fancy word for distrust, because if you don't get them first, they might get you. And third, we fight for glory, for reputation, because in a world like this, looking weak can get you killed.
The result of all this is what he calls a war of every man against every man. And that doesn't always mean literal, non-stop fighting. It means the constant threat of fighting. It's draining. In a world like that, there can be no art, no science, no society, just, as he says, that continual fear and danger of violent death.
And here's a crucial point. In the state of nature, concepts we take for granted like justice or fairness, right and wrong, they just don't exist. They have no meaning. You have a right to do whatever it takes to survive, even if that means killing someone else. It's a state of absolute and absolutely terrifying liberty.
Okay, so life in the state of nature is obviously a complete nightmare. It's unbearable. But here's the twist. Hobbes argues that the very same human reason that makes us so dangerous to each other also shows us the way out. Our own rational self-interest tells us something fundamental. Seek peace. It's the best strategy for survival. But, and this is a huge but, you only do that if others are willing to do the same. If peace isn't an option, then that same reason tells you to use all the advantages of war to defend yourself.
And this logic leads us directly to the solution, a social contract, or what Hobbes calls a covenant. The steps are simple. First, we all look around and agree, this is awful. So, second, we all mutually agree to give up our dangerous freedom, our right to everything. And third, we transfer all those rights to a single all-powerful authority.
Now this was a revolutionary idea for its time. For Hobbes, justice isn't some divine cosmic concept. It's much simpler. Justice is keeping the agreement you made. Injustice is breaking it. That's it.
Morality doesn't exist before the contract, it is born from the contract. So, we've all agreed to transfer our rights to achieve peace. But who do we transfer them to? This is where Hobbes introduces his most famous, most powerful creation, the sovereign, he calls the Leviathan.
The Leviathan is the state. Hobbes imagines it as an artificial man, built by all of us through a collective agreement. And this artificial man is way bigger, way stronger than any of us individually. Its entire purpose is singular and clear, to provide the protection and defense that we could never get on our own.
And if the state is this giant artificial body, then the sovereign, whether it's a king or a parliament, is its artificial soul. It's the mind, the will, that gives life and motion to the whole political body, directing all its strength towards keeping the peace.
Now, for this to work, and to prevent us from sliding back into chaos, Hobbes insists this sovereign power has to be absolute and indivisible. The sovereign alone gets to judge what's necessary for peace, control the military, write the laws, and punish criminals. For Hobbes, the moment you start dividing these powers, you're just writing a recipe for civil war.
And this is exactly why that power has to be absolute. I mean, think about it. What good is a contract if there's no one around to enforce it? As Hobbes famously says, covenants without the sword are but words. They're totally worthless. You need that overwhelming power, the sword, to make sure that the agreement actually means something.
So, this all brings us to the very core of Hobbes's entire philosophy. It's a stark, it's a challenging, and it's a bargain that, frankly, societies are still grappling with to this very day.
Hobbes is just brutally pragmatic here. He argues that even the worst, most inconvenient, maybe even oppressive government is still infinitely better than the alternative, the absolute horror of the state of nature and civil war. The hassles of tyranny, he says, are barely noticeable compared to the constant fear of a knife in the dark.
So when you boil it all down, the foundation of civilization is a trade. It's that simple. We surrender our natural, absolute freedom to do whatever we please. And what do we get in return? We get security. We get a power strong enough to protect us from ourselves and from each other.
And that leaves us right here, wrestling with the same question a Leviathan posed hundreds of years ago, a question that is just as relevant today. So I'll leave you with this to think about. How much of your personal freedom are you really willing to give up in order to feel safe?